Jean. Jungkook, we've got a problem. Jungkook, without looking away from the monitor. If it's about the servers again, talk to the admin. Hoseok, sitting across from him, drumming his fingers on the table. It's not about the servers. It's about Taeyoung's profile. Jungkook, leaning back lazily in his chair. What about it? Jean, there's an error. The AI couldn't process it properly. The system crashes when it tries to generate a match. Jungkook, fix the bug. Stop bothering me. Hoseok laughs nervously. If it were that easy, we wouldn't be here. We can't tell the investor that his son isn't getting results. Jean, Taeyoung is already waiting. We don't know how long the fix will take. We need to come up with something. Jungkook, and why is this my problem? Hoseok, leaning forward. Because you look, suitable enough. Just in case things go south. Jungkook, coldly. Suitable for what? Jean, for a temporary replacement. You'll pretend to be his match for a week. It'll buy us time to fix the system. Jungkook, you want me to go on a date with the investor's son? This has to be a joke. Hoseok, we're serious, Jungkook. We just need to buy some time. All you have to do is a few meetings, some small talk. No commitments. Jungkook, you're forgetting that I'm a developer, not an actor. Jean, and you're our colleague, who understands that the project's success depends on this investor. Or do you want the whole thing shut down? Jungkook, staring at them for a moment, then sighing. A week. Not a day longer. Hoseok, clapping his hands happily. Now that's the spirit. Jungkook, reservedly. If this turns into a disaster, don't blame me. The next day. Hoseok, bursting into the room holding a clothing rack. Jungkook, you're going to be perfect. Jungkook, looking up from his laptop. What's that? Hoseok, waving the rack dramatically. Classics. A suit, a shirt, a tie. Everything you need to look like someone who knows the difference between sneakers and derby shoes. Jungkook, grimacing. I'm comfortable in what I wear. Hoseok, sighing, placing the rack on the desk. Comfortable? Maybe. But Taeyoung loves classics, jazz, and everything that shows a hint of taste. You're not seriously thinking of showing up to your first date in sweatpants, are you? Jungkook, this is not a date. Hoseok, laughing. Oh, tell that to his father, who's funding this project. Or to Taeyoung himself when he looks at you like you're from another planet. Jungkook, pausing. Fine. But if it doesn't fit right, I'm wearing my own clothes. Hoseok, it fits perfectly. I picked it out myself. Meanwhile, at Taeyoung's house. Jimin, sitting on the couch with a cup of tea. So, how are you feeling? I'm nervous for you. Taeyoung, sighing, looking at the restaurant invitation. The same as always. It's probably just another person interested in my money. Jimin, hey, stop that. You don't know this person. Give them a chance. Not everyone is like your exes. Taeyoung, smiling softly. You always believe in the best, Jimin. Jimin, someone has to. You're not planning to live alone like some hermit, are you? Taeyoung, we'll see. If tonight goes badly, consider this my last try. Jimin, leaning forward. Taeyoung, you deserve happiness. Don't shut yourself off from people. Maybe this one will be different. Taeyoung, quietly. Maybe. Evening. Jungkook steps out of the office, now dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. Hoseok looks him over from head to toe, clearly pleased with the result. Hoseok. Now that's what I'm talking about. Taeyoung's going to be floored the moment he sees you. Jungkook, indifferently. Let's just hope he doesn't start asking too many questions. Hoseok, laughing. Don't worry. Just listen to what he says and nod. And remember, jazz isn't just music, it's a state of mind. Jungkook, sighing. I already regret this. The restaurant was luxurious, with soft lighting, live jazz music, and a quiet hum of conversations. Jungkook entered, glancing around. He felt uncomfortable in the formal suit but kept his posture straight, trying not to betray his unease. At a table in the back sat Taeyoung, dressed in an impeccable navy blue suit. He was flipping through the menu, but when he looked up and saw Jungkook, his gaze froze for a moment. Taeyoung to himself. Wow! Noticing the look, Jungkook gave a slight nod and walked over to the table. Jungkook, evenly. Are you Taeyoung? Taeyoung smiling. And you must be Jungkook. Jungkook sat across from him, feeling Taeyoung's gaze almost scanning him. But it wasn't judgmental or suspicious, more curious, with a hint of admiration. Taeyoung, I thought the only people who wore suits these days were trying to impress someone. But on you, it looks natural. Jungkook calmly. Thanks. I don't usually wear clothes like this, though. Taeyoung, that's a shame. It suits you. At that moment, a waiter approached their table to take their order. Taeyoung confidently selected a wine and main course, and Jungkook, though unfamiliar with places like this, calmly followed his lead. After the waiter left, Taeyoung leaned back in his chair. Jungkook, the music here is good. Taeyoung, good? He leaned forward slightly. These are the best musicians in the city. Every note they play is priceless. Jungkook raised an eyebrow slightly, intrigued by his words. Taeyoung, it's my passion. Music is honesty. It doesn't lie, it doesn't pretend. You either feel it or you don't. For a moment, Jungkook reflected on this, observing how Taeyoung's face lit up as he spoke about his love for music. Jungkook, with a slight smile. It seems like you really feel it. Taeyoung smiling back. Maybe as much as I feel, this is going to be an unusual evening. Jungkook froze for a moment. His gaze met Taeyoung's, and it felt like a spark passed between them. For the first time in a long while, Taeyoung felt seen, not as the heir to a wealthy family, but simply as a person. The waiter returned with the wine, breaking the moment. Jungkook reached for his glass, and their fingers briefly touched as Taeyoung did the same. It was a small thing, but both felt a strange warmth from that fleeting contact. They talked throughout the evening, their conversation flowing effortlessly, as if they'd known each other for years. While Jungkook tried to keep his distance, he couldn't help but notice how often Taeyoung laughed, how his eyes lit up when he talked about the things he loved. As the evening came to an end, Taeyoung looked at Jungkook and said, Taeyoung gently, thank you for tonight. I thought this would just be another formal dinner. But you made it special. Jungkook, evenly but sincerely. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And though they went their separate ways, neither could stop thinking about the other. Jungkook walked into the office, having already taken off his tie and thrown it over the back of a chair. He was greeted by the eager looks of Jin and Hoseok. Hoseok, raising a mug. Well, the hero of the evening is back. How did it go? Jungkook, gruffly. It was fine. Jin, suspiciously. Fine? You look like you just signed a deal with the devil. Spill it, did he interrogate you? Jungkook, sitting down at his desk. No. He was interesting. Hoseok, teasingly. Is that code for you liked him? Jungkook, with a cold glare. Cut it out, Hoseok. It's not funny. Jin. Wait, are you serious? Did something go wrong? Jungkook, pensively. No, everything went perfectly. Maybe even too perfectly. Hoseok. And that's a problem? Jungkook, sighing. Yes. Because he believed me. He was genuine. And we're deceiving him. Jin, waving a hand dismissively. Jungkook, it's not deception. It's a temporary solution. Just 1 week. Jungkook, seriously. But I can see how he looks at me. He doesn't know this is just a ploy to buy time. Hoseok, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Listen, you're not doing anything wrong. We're saving the project, and he'll get his real match as soon as we fix the bug. You said it yourself, it's for work. Jin. Plus, let's admit it, you don't seem to mind being his perfect match. You look happier than usual. Hoseok. Jungkook, no one's forcing him to fall for you. You're just providing a temporary cover. And honestly, you're the only one who can pull this off. Jungkook stared at them for a long moment before sighing and closing his eyes, trying to push away the guilt. Jungkook quietly. 1 week. No more tricks. Jin, raising his mug. Deal. Just keep it up. We'll fix everything, I promise. Hoseok. And you'll survive. We've got your back. Jungkook stood up, cast one last glance at his colleagues, and headed for the exit. Yet the heavy weight of guilt lingered inside him. He couldn't shake the memory of how Taeyoung had looked at him, the warmth in his laughter. And the sense that they understood each other without needing many words wouldn't leave his mind. A couple of days after their first meeting, Taeyoung called Jungkook. His voice was calm, yet there was an unexplainable warmth in it. Taeyoung. Jungkook, are you free this evening? Jungkook, slightly surprised. Yeah, I think so. Taeyoung. Great. This time, I want to show you something special. I'll pick you up at 7. Jungkook. Where are we going? Taeyoung smiling. You'll see. Before their second meeting, Jungkook stayed late at the office. Taeyoung's profile was open on his monitor, almost pulling his gaze to it. He didn't know why he felt so drawn to reading the answers, even though he knew he shouldn't. One question caught his attention. What is something you could never forgive in a relationship? Taeyoung's answer was brief. Deception. Jungkook sat back, his thoughts weighing heavier. The words suddenly felt particularly heavy. He closed the profile, shut off the monitor, and went home to change. That evening, Taeyoung arrived in a sleek black SUV. When Jungkook got into the car, he greeted him politely, albeit reservedly. Jungkook. No hints? Taeyoung, with a mysterious smile. Nope. Just trust me. They drove for about an hour, the city lights gradually giving way to quiet, dark streets. Eventually, the car stopped near a small trail leading to the shore. Taeyoung. Let's go. Jungkook stepped out, feeling the salty breeze, and followed Taeyoung. After a few minutes, they reached a small, secluded beach. The soft moonlight reflected off the water, and the waves gently lapped at the sand. Jungkook. Do you come here often? Taeyoung. When I need to be myself. No one here expects anything from me. It's just me in this place. Jungkook watched Taeyoung, surprised by his openness. This was a completely different person from the one who sat across from him at the fancy restaurant. They sat on the sand, and Taeyoung pulled a thermos of hot chocolate from his backpack, offering it to Jungkook. Taeyoung. I knew you'd appreciate this place. You can just breathe here. Jungkook felt the tension in his chest ease slightly. He gazed at the waves, letting himself forget, just for a moment, that all of this was a facade. On the beach, under the soft glow of the moon, Taeyoung noticed the contemplative look on Jungkook's face. Taeyoung. Are you always this serious? Jungkook, shrugging. Just thinking. They walked a little farther along the shore, and Jungkook finally mustered the courage to ask the question that had been gnawing at him. Jungkook. Why did you write in your profile that you never forgive deception? Taeyoung paused for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. Taeyoung. Because everything I've been through in the past boiled down to lies. The people around me only saw my status, my money, my connections. But I wanted to be loved for who I am, not for what I can give. Jungkook felt a lump of guilt rise in his throat. His gaze dropped to the sand. Jungkook quietly. I'm sorry. Taeyoung, leaning in closer. Why are you saying that? Jungkook stayed silent, his hands unconsciously clenching into fists. Taeyoung noticed and gently reached out, lifting Jungkook's chin to meet his eyes. Taeyoung, gazing intently. What's wrong, Jungkook? Jungkook couldn't find the words. His heart was pounding too fast, and the words were stuck somewhere deep inside. Taeyoung studied him for a long moment before, gently and tentatively, leaning in and kissing him. It wasn't bold or forceful, it was more of a question, a way to understand, to feel. Jungkook froze. For a moment, everything inside him stopped, the doubts, the guilt, the thoughts. But then reality rushed back in, and he abruptly pulled away. Jungkook softly, almost whispering. Don't. Taeyoung surprised. I'm sorry, Jungkook, lowering his gaze. Just take me home, please. Taeyoung straightened up, his face filled with confusion, but he didn't push further. Taeyoung calmly. All right. If that's what you want. The ride back was steeped in silence once again. Jungkook wrestled with his inner turmoil. The guilt of deception weighed heavy on him, but what frightened him even more were the feelings beginning to emerge. When the car stopped in front of his building, he got out quickly, not even saying goodbye. Taeyoung remained in the car, watching Jungkook's retreating figure, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Jungkook shut his apartment door behind him and practically collapsed onto the couch. His heart was still racing, and Taeyoung's words, and that kiss, played on repeat in his mind. He closed his eyes, but the images didn't fade, the warm gaze, the gentle touch. And that word from the profile. Deception. Jungkook, to himself. I shouldn't have. This is wrong. He ran his hands over his face, trying to steady himself. But the more he thought about it, the stronger the feeling became that he had gone too far. The next evening, Jungkook sat on the couch, holding a mug of now cold coffee. Thoughts of the previous evening haunted him, his first kiss, the guilt weighing on him, and Taeyoung's gaze, so full of sincerity. The doorbell rang. Jungkook opened it, and his heart clenched for a moment. Taeyoung stood there, holding a small bouquet of white lilies. Taeyoung, awkwardly. Hi. Can I come in? Jungkook stepped aside silently, letting him in. Taeyoung, looking at the flowers. These are for you. I wanted to apologize for last night. Maybe I rushed things. It's hard for me to hold back when I'm around you. Jungkook felt a warmth from Taeyoung's words, but it only deepened his guilt. He knew he couldn't continue the lie any longer. Jungkook quietly. Taeyoung, please sit down. Taeyoung noticed his tension and sat down, placing the flowers on the table. Taeyoung, did something happen? Jungkook took a deep breath, trying to gather his thoughts. Jungkook, I need to tell you the truth. What you think about me, it's not entirely true. Taeyoung, frowning. What do you mean? Jungkook, I'm not your perfect match. I'm just a programmer on the project. Your profile hasn't been processed yet, and your real match will be found in the next few days. This was all just a way to buy time. Taeyoung's expression shifted through surprise, pain, and anger. He stood up abruptly. Taeyoung coldly. So it was all a lie? Every conversation, every moment, just a game? Jungkook quietly. It's not like that. Taeyoung, raising his voice. You think that's an excuse? You knew what I've been through, and you still decided to make me part of this charade? Again? Jungkook. It wasn't about your wealth or status. Taeyoung, cutting him off, furious. You're just a sellout. For money, you were willing to play with my feelings. If you found me so repulsive, you could have said so from the start instead of pretending. Jungkook wanted to argue, but the words caught in his throat. He couldn't explain that it wasn't like that Taeyoung meant something to him too, that it was his first kiss. Taeyoung, I've had enough. I never thought I'd be in this situation again. Goodbye, Jungkook. He turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Jungkook's apartment. Jungkook stood in silence, feeling as if the world was crumbling around him. His hands trembled, and his throat tightened so much that he could barely breathe. After a few minutes, he dialed Hoseok's number. Jungkook, in a hollow voice. It's over. Hoseok, surprised. What happened? What are you talking about? Jungkook. I told him everything. He left. He hates me. Hoseok. Jungkook, calm down. You did what you had to. It was the right thing to do. Jungkook. But the right thing doesn't always mean it's good. He hung up before Hoseok could respond and sank onto the couch. His thoughts circled endlessly around one question. Had he lost Taeyoung forever? Taeyoung's apartment. Taeyoung sat on the couch, gripping his phone tightly. He needed to vent, so he called Jimin. Taeyoung, agitated. He's just like the rest, Jimin. I let myself believe in someone again, and he used me. Jimin, seriously. I'm coming over. Wait for me. 20 minutes later, Jimin walked into the apartment. He found Taeyoung in the same spot, in the same state. Jimin. All right, tell me everything. Taeyoung, bitterly smirking. What's there to tell? He admitted it was all a game. They just wanted to stall for time until their program found me a real match. Jimin. And you think he did it out of greed? Taeyoung. How else? They're all the same. Sweet words at first, and then betrayal. Again and again. Jimin, gently. You talk like you've known him your whole life. Taeyoung, it was just 2 dates. Why are you so upset? Taeyoung fell silent, his gaze becoming unfocused. Jimin, maybe it's not about him. Maybe you just like that he wasn't like everyone else. Taeyoung, I don't know, Jimin. It just hurts. It hurts so much. Jimin sat down beside him and wrapped him in a comforting hug. Jimin, you're stronger than you think. But maybe, just maybe, you rushed to a conclusion too quickly. Meanwhile, at Jungkook's apartment, Jin and Hoseok entered without waiting for an invitation. Jungkook was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. Hoseok anxiously. Jungkook, are you okay? Jungkook, in a hoarse voice. I ruined everything. He hates me. Jin. Start talking. All of it. Jungkook recounted everything that had happened. When he finished, a heavy silence settled over the room. Hoseok regretfully. Jungkook, we never thought it would go this far. We couldn't imagine that you, our cold, indifferent Jungkook, would fall for him after just 2 dates. Jin. Hey, don't blame yourself. This isn't just on you. We're at fault too, for dragging you into this. Jungkook clutched his chest, struggling to breathe. Jungkook. My heart hurts so much, I feel like I want to tear it out. I don't think I can handle this. Unable to bear it, Hoseok knelt beside Jungkook and wrapped him in a tight hug. Hoseok through tears. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for putting you in this position. We never should have. Jungkook hugged him back, trying to hold back his own tears, but the pain was too overwhelming. The next day. VIP booth in the corner of a club. Jimin. Another round? Taeyoung tiredly. Sure. Not like it'll help. They sat in the shadows, away from the crowd. The music pounded, and lights flickered in colorful bursts, but Taeyoung stared into the void, swirling a glass of whiskey in his hand. Jimin. You know, I have to admit, I've never seen you this upset over someone. Taeyoung, with a bitter smirk. What do you expect? He turned out to be like everyone else. I just fooled myself again. Jimin. Then why are you here, instead of just forgetting him? Maybe it's because he actually matters to you. Taeyoung didn't reply, taking another long sip instead. At the bar. Jin, glancing at Jungkook. You look terrible. Jungkook, shrugging. I feel worse. Hoseok. You need to distract yourself. We didn't drag you here for nothing. Jungkook, grimly. I'm not in the mood. I just want to go home. Jin. Not until you try this cocktail. It might help. Hoseok, heading to the restroom, accidentally bumped into Taeyoung on his way out. His heart skipped a beat as recognition struck. Quickly, he pulled out his phone and called Jin. Hoseok. Jin, get Jungkook out of here. Now. He can't see Taeyoung. Jin. What? Why? Hoseok. Just do it. He hung up but couldn't hold himself back. Summoning his courage, he approached Taeyoung. Hoseok. Taeyoung, I need to talk to you. Taeyoung coldly. If you're here to defend your friend, don't bother. Hoseok firmly. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're being unfair to him. Taeyoung. Unfair? He lied to me from the start. Hoseok. Yes, he was part of the situation we created. But you don't know the whole story. That kiss on the beach. It was his first kiss. He's never been in a relationship before. Taeyoung froze, his cold demeanor faltering for a moment. Hoseok pressing on. You think he's some kind of sellout? You haven't seen how much he's hurting. His heart is breaking because he never wanted to deceive you, but he got trapped in this mess too. And yes, he made a mistake, but you should know, he cares about you. Taeyoung quietly. His first kiss? Hoseok. You threw words at him that cut deeper than you realize. I'm here to tell you that if it means losing the funding in our project, so be it. I'll choose my friend over anything. He lifted his head, his statement final, and walked away, leaving Taeyoung standing there in shock. Taeyoung returned to the VIP booth, but he couldn't find peace. Hoseok's words echoed in his mind, bringing a mix of pain and regret. Jimin, noticing Taeyoung's withdrawn expression. Hey, what's going on? Did someone get to you? Taeyoung quietly. I said things to him he didn't deserve. That night, Taeyoung couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, replaying Hoseok's words over and over. First kiss. Never been in a relationship. His heart ached as he realized just how unfair he'd been to Jungkook. The next morning, Taeyoung found himself heading to the startup's office where Jungkook worked. He entered the building, surprising Jean, who was in the lobby. Jean. Taeyoung? What are you doing here? Taeyoung. I need to talk to Jungkook. Is he here? Jean, hesitating. He's in the break room. But... Before Jean could finish, Taeyoung was already making his way to the door. He knocked, but without waiting for a response, he stepped inside. Jungkook looked up, seeing Taeyoung, and froze, unsure of what to expect. Taeyoung quietly. May I? Jungkook slowly. You're already here. Sit down. Taeyoung closed the door and sat down across from Jungkook. For a few moments neither of them spoke. Taeyoung, taking a deep breath. Before you say anything, let me apologize. Jungkook looked up, blinking in surprise. Taeyoung softly. I said so many terrible things to you. I let my anger and my past blind me to what you were trying to tell me. I'm sorry. I was unfair. Jungkook. You had reasons to be angry. I understand that. Taeyoung shaking his head. But it doesn't justify my words. I accuse you of things you didn't even do. And the worst part is, I did it because I was scared that I might trust you. Jungkook lowered his gaze. Jungkook. I've felt awful this whole time. I wanted to stop, but I was afraid. I'm so sorry for deceiving you. You didn't deserve that. Taeyoung, leaning in closer. Nobody's perfect, Jungkook. We both made mistakes. But if you're willing to give us a chance, so am I. Jungkook looked at him. His eyes were filled with doubt, but there was a glimmer of hope in them. Jungkook quietly. You can really forgive me? Taeyoung smiling. If you can forgive me for my words. Jungkook sat there, feeling something heavy and oppressive he'd carried inside him for so long finally begin to lift. Taeyoung, whispering. I don't want to lose you again. He reached out, gently touching Jungkook's hand. Jungkook looked down at their intertwined fingers, then back up at Taeyoung. His heart was still racing, but this time it wasn't from pain. It was something else, warm and alive. Jungkook, barely above a whisper. Taeyoung. Taeyoung leaned in slowly, giving Jungkook time to pull away if he wanted. But Jungkook didn't. This kiss was entirely different. There was no hesitation, just warmth and a promise to start anew. When they pulled apart, Taeyoung smiled, still holding Jungkook's hand. Taeyoung softly. I think this is the start of something good. Jungkook smiled back, just a little. Jungkook. This time, no lies. Taeyoon nodded, the sincerity on his face so clear that Jungkook felt, for the first time in a long while, genuinely at ease.